Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Al-Hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest. Hi Sherina, how are you?
Hello, hi Haider. Nice to speak to you. Thank you for speaking to me today.
No worries. I mean, it's I think the last time we spoke was sort of an informal chat. I think around the winter time. Now we're sort of in spring. And you know how 3 or 4 months changes your lives quite drastically sometimes. I had a pretty rough winter. My father passed away, which was a kind of blessing in disguise, really, because normally winter for me is like an absolutely horrible time. You know, I have SADs and I get really down and everything. And then you know, interestingly, when my father passed away, I spent a lot more time with my family and extended family, and we sort of came together a lot more than we'd normally do. So that was really interesting because, you know, my relationship with my brothers and sisters has got better, you know, more than 100% since my father passed away. So, you know, I can look back at the winter of 2023 with a kind of positivity, you know, look at things. So that was quite interesting for me, you know, winter, because normally winter is just horrible for me, you know.
I think winter, first of all, I'm so sorry, because obviously I saw your posts and you had such respect for your dad and having read your book as well.
Oh, magic.
You know, a part of your life, you know, motivated you. But as you say, sometimes when bad things happen, that something, you know, it then sometimes it triggers something else, and that whole thing of community and family. Although winter times is often a time when we should stop and get together with family, you know. I think I mentioned that talking about seasons, even, you know, if we start following, you know, if you look at the natural environment, everything sort of shuts down and you go internal. And I think, you know, it's cold and it's a time where we kind of maybe stop, rest. You know, there's different religious holidays, isn't there, around winter time, and it's a time for being with family and regrouping and resting. And I think that is something that we all need.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite difficult here in the West because you're expected to just carry on as normal, just like, you know, you're the busy bee in summer. You're expected to be at that sort of energy level in the winter as well, which I found, you know, I find quite difficult actually, you know, getting out of bed and doing the whole things, and you're expected to have 100% bee energy during December and January and February.
That's true. There's a lot to be said for how we work at the minute, though, isn't there?
Well, yeah, I think it's all for grabs at the moment. I think, you know, with the current strike situation, and you know how COVID just changed the whole way that we think about working, and you know, think about that sort of home work dynamic and home work space. I mean, I must say, I'm still doing the traditional, you know, commuting to the office and seeing the patients in the office. I haven't actually done. I mean, I've done some digital online work, and you know, that's fine.
I think the commute has its place. Like they talk about now the virtual commute, you know, where at least otherwise you're just at home and separating from work and home life. And if you are working from home, it's good to actually get out, go for a walk, and then find somewhere, you know, set up your office or your working space so you're having a division between the two. But obviously we still need you know, the doctors, we still need to be seeing people. It's never going to stop.
No, 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 no. I mean, it's never going to stop until you're a patient and you eventually die. I think that's the only time doctors stop seeing patients is when they can't physically
Yeah. I
move
mean,
their body or sort of be functional anymore.
this
Uh,
is
that's an interesting word, virtual commuting. That's the first time I've heard of that.
Oh yeah. So I think obviously there's going to be whole new concepts coming up as more and more people start working from home, isn't it? And when you look, it's very easy to start blurring the lines if you're working at home all day. What's home, what's work? And I think the brain likes to compartmentalize
Mm.
things and separate things out. So it can be healthier to have that sort of those boundaries. And when you finish for the day, I'm finished now. That's
Yeah, I
it.
mean, the image that came to my mind is sort of wearing a sort of a VR headset and being stuck in traffic for about an hour as part of your commute.
Not quite.
Not quite. That would be
So,
quite,
yeah,
yeah, interesting. Yeah.
just separating, I think, the home life from the work life.
So it's like a transition sort of period. You've got to have a designated transition between home and then going into work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been commuting my whole working life, and yeah, it's like a ritual, for me. It's like, okay, I'm commuting now. I've got to do something in that commute, whether it's, I mean, usually it was, previously it was reading books, or listening to music. Now it's listening to podcasts. I'm normally listening to podcasts on the commute. And it's awesome.
Yeah. This is it. It's using your time. I mean, whether that's, I think you've got to be aware now. Like you, I love listening to podcasts, and I'm always wanting to learn. It just feels like there's so much to know these days, and podcasts, it's a great way to do it. But I do find sometimes that I realize I'm always on the go, and
Yeah.
I think the commute can be a good time as well, just to switch off. And I don't know if you are into meditation. Didn't come across in your book or not,
Yeah, I
but
mean, I try and I try and keep the book as a religious as possible. Because
yeah.
there are some religious sensitivities out there.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, part of my religion is sort of praying on a regular basis, and
Exactly. So prayer
yeah,
is a form, isn't it?
yeah,
But just that switching off and like, but for me, it's breathing. Being even in terms of body scans. Just being aware and just stopping, because that's one of the things I think all of us don't do as much of. Which, I mean, that came to me sort of. I had the usual where I burnt out and was forced to stop. And I think one of the things that has prevented me going back to that is the fact that I meditate now every single day. So, like 10 minutes when I wake up is my minimum. And even to the extent my son, from he's only 5, but he knows not to disturb mummy while mummy's meditating if he comes in early. Um, and that that does, I think we're all sort of on the go 24/7. I think if we don't stop, we forget what's important to us, or what we need, and that sort of spirals into just being constant 24/7. You don't get time to think, you don't know what you want, because you're just surviving and you're just firefighting all the time. And I think we have to force ourselves to stop. So whether that's through prayer or through some form of meditation, or even just listening to music, I think it's really important that we find time in the day to stop.
What got you started in meditation?
um Well, basically, so when I burnt out, I had an appointment at Practitioner Health, and I went in there a complete mess, feeling a failure, because everyone else was managing other people. I only had one child, um, some people are working and they've got 4 children. I'm a failure. What am I doing wrong? And I saw a lovely GP, Kate Little, and she started asking me about my life. And I realized that I was going to work. So I dropped my son at nursery, the commute to work, um, get there. I was doing, blood results before I started, seeing patients, doing things in between. Lunchtime, I was doing paperwork. I was pumping because I was still breastfeeding. And then I was rushing in the afternoon, trying to get finished, stressing out that I wouldn't get back to pick up my son. Um, Coming home, picking him up, sorting him out. He was co-sleeping. We were getting about 4 hours, 3, 4 hours sleep a night. And she just looked at me and was like, well, no wonder,
Mm.
what's happening. So we came up with, what different things could I do? And I needed time off. And it took a while to sort of come up with different strategies for what can I do for myself. And I'd always been interested in meditation, and I started looking into lifestyle medicine at that point. And I used to tell people about it, tell patients about it, but never never apply it to myself. And it was small things. So it was, right, I need to start connecting with friends and allowing people to look after me and actually doing things for myself. But one of the easy things that I could do for myself every morning was 10 minutes of meditation. And that was back in 2018. And I have done that ever since. So there was something in your book again, because I thought I better, about, mastering something if you'd done 10,000 hours. And I thought, oh, I wonder how many hours of meditation I've done. And I went on the car map and I had done 900 hours, which was disappointing. But I also, because now I use Insight Timer, which is another app, and I've done 400 hours of meditation on Insight Timer. But that has honestly saved me. And by becoming more mindful and doing meditation, it got me to recognize my emotions aren't me. So when I went back to work, say if I started um, feeling angry or feeling stressed, you say I'm angry, I'm stressed. No, I'm not angry, I'm not stressed. I'm noticing feelings of stress. I'm noticing feelings of angry. They're not me, right? I'm noticing them now. So now I'm going to control that. So let's, work on my breathing. Why am I feeling this way? And just it changes the way you think. And funnily enough, now, doing lifestyle medicine, reading around it, there's a really good book called Altered Traits, which is about meditation. But all the research now on how it changes the brain, it changes the way you think. Um, so yeah, it's something that I recommend to everyone now.
And meditation wasn't a part of your life earlier to that. It wasn't as if you had childhood experiences or mystical experiences or anything like that in early childhood that got you interested in.
No, I mean, I was so my dad is from South India, and they're all very strict Catholic there. So I came from a sort of a Catholic upbringing, but like, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. So there was prayer and going to church and that sort of thing, but no meditation as such. I was interested in Buddhism, and started looking at it, but never really experienced, like, or did it. I think you need to build it up and do it regularly to see the benefits.
So it was more of a sort of an intellectual pursuit rather than a sort of a practical hands-on pursuit in terms of
Yeah, I
Buddhism.
think so. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Or with Buddhism.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I was just interested. I
yeah,
I'm interested. It's good to know about other beliefs
yeah.
and then the Buddhism. I like some of the ideas around it. Like even now, I looking at Eastern medicine now is something I'm really interested in. Just exploring. You grow up, you go to school, you have to do your exams, and then we go into medical school, and in medical school we're told this is it, this is the right way, this is how it is, and we believe it. I treat right. This is right. This is how it's done, and this is what we do. And it's only when you have those beliefs challenged, and you start looking, and now with lifestyle medicine, one of the big things is there's a whole module on physician health.
Hmm.
And I think, why in medical school do we not learn to look after ourselves? We go and we are looking after the health of our nation, all these doctors. And probably generalizing, but certainly I went to Charing Cross Medical School and it was wonderful. I loved Charing Cross. There was pre-Imperial College, and we were all drinking alcoholic, we didn't sleep, we ate fast food, all these things, and yet we are the people in charge of the nation's health. And it just, I don't know, maybe I'm sounding self-righteous, but since doing a lifestyle visit, but actually, God, I need to be eating, I need to be sleeping, and I need to be exercising, and I should be practicing what I preach.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if it's hard to do, then I appreciate when I'm telling someone else to do it, how hard it is to do it. So how do you do it? And if you can do it yourself, then you can get other people to do it.
When was the first time you started challenging your belief in the supremacy of Western medicine?
um, okay, so funny story. I was a huge meat eater. Okay, I didn't eat vegetables. I literally used to eat a KFC bargain bucket when we went out drinking. Like, I was terrible. So anyway, we got
You're not
house.
the only one, You're not.
No, I know, I
Yeah,
know.
we were all doing it.
How I live. My mum woke me up every morning with a bacon sandwich. That was my motivation to get out of bed, was a bacon sandwich every morning.
You
Like,
lucky woman.
yeah. So we got house rabbits back in 2012, 20, maybe 2014, and 2012. And these rabbits, so back then I would have eaten rabbit. Okay. So these rabbits came along and they were identical. And I was really surprised to find that they had a personality. And I don't know why I was surprised, but you could see if they were happy, sad, and I've still one of them. He's 10, he's 11 this year. So he's still here. Um, Absolutely fell in love with these rabbits, and I was like, oh my God, I couldn't eat rabbit, and I decided I would give up meat for Lent. So I think that was 2013, and I did it, and I've never eaten meat again. But what happened is I had to sort of change how I eat. So back then I wasn't, because you can get loads of junk food, like vegan junk food, all the rest of it. But I started cutting out anything that had I went completely vegan actually initially. So I cut out all dairy, but I was just eating fresh foods, and I started to cook. I was having more dal and all this kind of thing. And it wasn't for a health reason, it was purely just because I wanted nice food. And my weight dropped off. I had autoimmune hypothyroidism and I needed less and less thyroxine. And I felt better just through changing what I ate. So it was kind of a personal experience. And I was like, wow. And for some reason, that started making me look into things. And I realized how important nutrition was. And we're not taught really nutrition at med school. And also looking at how it can reverse disease. And then I started reading Rangan Chatterjee's books. He's famous for his stuff, and so that's when I became interested. But what I've found is, you start changing that belief, I started changing other beliefs. So even my political beliefs. So I grew up, my dad was like a strong conservative supporter. I loved Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
Hey, she was, and my political beliefs changed. I started being more aware of the environment. Um, Everything changed actually, all from that one thing of just noticing the change when I ate. because I was like, I'll do this for Lent, but there's no way I cannot eat meat. You know, I couldn't give up bacon sandwiches. So I'll be going back. But I didn't miss it, and I started. Yeah, it just changed how I felt. And it was one thing, and it just triggered other things.
So
And
it
so
made you
now,
feel better, essentially. Did you?
yeah,
Did it?
yeah, I
Yeah.
did, and it also made me question things. So now I try and stay open, and you know, if someone has a different opinion, I'll always listen. And I think we can get stuck in our own echo chambers, can't we? So we have a belief and we look out for the things that confirm that belief. And if there's something that we don't agree with, we think, no, but look at all of this. And I've seen that quite a lot. So I I've joined sort of plant-based medics, you know, the plant-based community. But I also, you know, I do have an open mind. I don't force it on anybody. Um, but then when there was a position for a lifestyle GP locally, I joined them to do group consultations. They were reversing diabetes using the low carb diet. Now, but there they were very strict low carb. Low carb is the only way, there's no other way. And it was really interesting because I didn't agree with it, but I went along with it because I thought, well, I can bring my views, and they were open to my views too. But it helps you to learn that you know you can see other people's point of views. And now I kind of take things from different places, you know, and you get a more full picture than just sitting in your echo chamber and saying this is the way, this is the only way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. What not normally when you do change the beliefs, you go from a, generally speaking, from a place of certainty into a place of uncertainty and sort of unrest and angst. Um, did you experience that, or did you manage to sort of curtail that personal
Comfortable
disaster?
with the fact that I know nothing.
Right.
You know, I'm comfortable. I don't think anyone can know everything. And I also question people who give these lectures and say, no, there's no other way. This is the only way. And it's like, I think you have to be open
Mm,
to other ways because it's the only way you learn. How can you ever be certain that something is one way?
mm, mm.
Um,
Did it change your practice in general practice?
Yeah. So particularly along the lines of I started thinking, God, so I've worked in, you know, what's considered well-to-do areas. So I've worked in Guildford, and then for the last years I was in Ascot. I live in Wokingham. And you know, people are coming in and they're in high stress jobs, they're having long commutes, their blood pressure's through the roof, they're getting tension headaches, IBS. And you know, technically, conventionally, they come in, their blood pressure's sky high. You check them, how are you? Oh, fine, thank you, doctor. Your blood pressure's really high, you know. Talk about lifestyle. You know, we also talk about lifestyle, but then they're straight on medication. Whereas now it's like, tell me what's going on in life. Well, no wonder, you know, you're stressed, you're going through divorce, or this is happening, that is happening. Let's look at sorting that out. But if we can't, maybe you need to go on medication. But again, you know, you can't do that in 10 minutes. And that's the problem with this antiquated. That's why GPs are burning out. There's no time to do the job they want to do. There's moral injury because sometimes they're just surviving. And even though they know there's probably a lot more going on, it's quicker to prescribe a medication.
I mean, I get the impression that the system's been rigged that way so that, they're on polypharmacy. Or am I just being a bit cynical
No,
and
I
conspiracy theorist?
I feel quite angry that there is clear evidence for, you know, exercise, diet, sort of from a non, you know, just from natural foods. But we are plagued by industry and, you know, the pharmaceutical industry, we've got the food industry. And when you look at research, often you can see that it's, you know, you can make a study and someone can make a study and it's financed by a certain industry and they will prove that this works, yet someone else can finance it, it's financed by a different, and they will prove that the opposite works. And and that's what I found, just looking at different studies. One minute something's good for you, the next minute shows that something's bad for you. And we're obsessed with studies, but I think we need to look at who's financing them
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Yeah.
what the background is. And on that, actually, I always talk about the Eat Well plate. um, I always get people to look at the Canadian Eat Well plate, okay, and compare it to the American and the UK Eat Well plate, because the Canada's Eat Well plate was the only place where the government decided to take away any sort of industry backing. So it's all purely scientific, and it looks very different to the UK and the US Eat Well plate.
How does it look different?
It's just more based on whole foods, and so it talks about sources of protein and sources of calcium without necessarily saying you should buy this, you should buy that. It doesn't have any. I mean, if you look at our Eat Well plate, that they have something like you know um, fizzy drinks or chocolate, they still have it on the side and say in moderation. It doesn't need to be there at all, but it's
Mm.
there, you know?
And that's because of industry involved in the
Yeah,
influence.
yeah,
Mm. Mm.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that there was a bit of a Freudian slip there. You said pharmaceutical injury, so that's
Did
quite,
I?
that's quite insightful, and a lot of
It has its place. Don't get me wrong. It has its place, but I
for
just
sure, for sure, for sure.
thought,
But not to the extent where we spend most of our time in medical school just learning different therapeutics, and you think to yourself,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the thing that put me off medical school a lot is I'm thinking to myself, I'm a bit of a pill pusher here, um, which is maybe why I went into surgery. There's less pill pushing, but then
yeah.
there's device pushing and instrumentation pushing and
But you see, you've got to the place where there's already a problem. I think the NHS is drowning. We need to focus on prevention. And I
yeah.
don't think prevention with medications is the way forward. We need to be looking at lifestyle.
Yeah, it's difficult because then it takes the doctor out of the equation. You don't really need a doctor for prevention, I don't think.
At the minute, we do. Yeah, I mean, you're right. We don't need. I actually I remember someone saying, but if everybody goes your way, you will not have a job. And I think good,
Yeah,
because if everyone's healthy, then good. I think, that we're always going to need doctors, but in terms of um, looking at, we, I think we need to, because the other thing is that we look at sort of mental health, we look at cardiovascular health, we look at gut health, and now I think we're seeing more that it's all connected.
yeah,
And what you eat and how you exercise
yeah,
influences a lot of it. Epigenetics is coming in now, so you can say, oh, my whole family, it runs in the family, so I'm going to get this. But actually, you can stop it. You can not switch on that gene with how you live your life.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, when I did medical school in the 90s, and it was literally, yeah, it was prevention didn't even come into the equation, and that's because society at the time wasn't as what's the word? Well, there wasn't any communication or widespread information, and we didn't have that many people in the hospitals. um, but I think prevention has to be number one now, for sure. Prevention and sort of integrated approach. I think that has to be the
Absolutely.
number one approach when it comes to healthcare. And then you've got the other sort of two big things, which is sort of the digital world and then the sort of artificial intelligence. They're going to play a massive role in how healthcare is going to be delivered in the future. But the pharmaceutical industry is very powerful, so they'll always find ways of making sure that their interests are upheld. So you got interested in sort of all the plant-based kind of medicine, and how did that fit in with your? I mean, was that the reason for the burnout? What was the reason for the burnout? What actually happened?
The reason for the burnout, I think, was I look back and I really did love being a GP. And when you take away all the other stuff, it is like one of the best jobs. You know, you meet people, that whole cradle to grave thing. But as time went on, and I think it might have even happened pre-maternity leave, like it was just getting busier and busier. And I think society's changed as well. And a bit like you said, people are using the GP now rather than where there would be communities and like even someone breaks up with their boyfriend, they come and see their GP and they want antidepressants, classic example. So it was changing, but I went off on maternity leave and came back, and I do think I've got a lot of, what's the word, I feel for working mums, because I think as women it's almost like you're expected to do it all, and I expected to do it all. I wanted to be the best mum, run a household, and still be a doctor that I was. Um,
Where did
but
that come from?
I think, well, with coaching, you talk about drivers, isn't it? I think sometimes if you want to do the best job, you just, whenever you do something, you want to do it well. So I'm just one of those people that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well. And the one thing, I have a baby now. Like if I'm going to do anything right, it's going to be this. It's everything has to be perfect. I mean, for the first year, I didn't let my son watch any screens, no TV. Funnily enough, post burnout, I put him in front of the TV so I could have 10 minutes to myself. But that was actually making me a better mum in the long run. Um, but yeah, so I think it was a combination of things. So now it's different. I think the NHS has changed so much that with general practice in particular, there is just so much expectation from the public. There are more sort of hoops to jump through. There's more paperwork. There's more stuff coming from the hospital. People are more complex. Um, so and there's just little time. So, but back then, I mean, this was pre-COVID. I just think it was doing too much. I wasn't looking after myself. And I mean, when I look back, I used to see 15 patients, coffee break, 9 patients, lunch, and then 14 patients. And that was, and that was making sure that I could leave by 10 past 5 so that I could pick my son up from nursery.
That is a
Um,
lot.
yeah, it was too much, you know. Um, so yeah, and I think that particularly women, working mums, we're all still sort of, it does fall to us to run the household. And I'm generalizing, and there are plenty of house husbands or people that do 50-50. But as a general rule, when a child gets ill, it's usually the mum that has to sort it out and take the time off. And is juggling all things, and it's often the mums that are doing the shopping or doing the food and all that mental load. Just right, what are we out of? What needs doing? What do they need to take to school? Oh, it's this day tomorrow. And it's just constant. And again, this is why we all need to sometimes just stop.
Yeah, yeah, what changed? I mean, what is it that sort of changed within you that allowed you to kind of make the changes, or was it a gradual process, something difficult to put your finger on?
I think it was a gradual process. So I went back. So I had my sessions at Practitioner Health. I felt a lot better. Um, I went back, and obviously at work they were very supportive because they didn't want to lose me. So I went back and I started with a phased return, and it built up and I felt better. But what I also noticed was where if people came in and say patients can be aggressive, which never used to happen years ago. And it's not all, I mean, the majority are absolutely lovely. You remember the ones that aren't, unfortunately. Um, and I still remember what made me quit was I'd had a particularly bad day, just running late because I think I had someone who'd been suicidal. And then I called somebody in, and they were basically just they had dental abs. They had something going on. It was dental, and we can't treat dental problems. I'm not a dentist, and they wanted more antibiotics. And I was explaining, look, I really don't know what's going on. It doesn't look good. You need to see a dentist. And this patient refused to leave my room. No, and she's shouting at me, I want antibiotic. I'm not, I said, I'm not prepared. I'm not covered medical legally to prescribe antibiotics for this. I don't know what's going on. You need to see a dentist. There could be something serious going on. And she kept shouting. And it got to the point where previously, just pre-burnout, that sort of thing would have made me, I would have had, because what I used to get palpitations. I used to feel myself shaking, trying, my heart racing. And I remember sort of starting to get really wound up and thinking, oh, but I noticed it and I was thinking, right, no, this is not, don't let her, don't let it come to you. Stop. And I very calmly said to her, if you don't leave my room, I'm going to leave my room. And she kept shouting. So I got up and I walked out. And I went to the practice manager and I said, look, I can't. I said, I'm already running late. I've got patients waiting. So I'm not dealing with her. And so she was taken, one of the partners went and was talking to her, and he was next door to me. And I saw four more patients, and during the whole time, all I could hear was her shouting at him through that time. And when I finished, I felt awful. So I went in, I said, oh, are you okay? And he just was really, he said, oh, she'll probably complain. And I was thinking, no, that's not, this isn't good. And I went home that night and I said, you know what? To my husband, Andy, I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm done. But it wasn't a sort of a split decision. It was a kind of a calm decision that actually I need to step out. But I had the option because I was working for a digital healthcare company. So in the background, I've worked for Babylon, and now I work for Doctor Care Anywhere, and I'm a clinical lead there. So because I had that sort of, I knew I could step away and still have an income. And what working for a digital health company as opposed to the NHS taught me was that there was another way of working. And weirdly enough, there, it's changing now, but there, people were a lot more, I think when people are paying for a service, they tend to treat you differently. But there was just no stress. And so that's what I did. And that was just before COVID hit. So I put my notice in at the beginning of 2020. And so I did my 3 months notice and felt hugely guilty. But then COVID hit, and actually digital health then took off, didn't it? So I worked for a little bit in the NHS, but actually there was so much work online that because most people thought surgeries were closed, even though they weren't, that took off, and it just showed me that there was another way to work, um, where I could be respected, where there were boundaries, where I could look after myself, where I could take breaks. And that's how it should be. We shouldn't be working ourselves into the ground. We talk about companies, if they want good employees, they should look after them and treat them well, and then they'll get the best employees. The NHS is full of really creative, talented people, and doctors, nurses, everyone working there. It runs on goodwill. And by not looking after our staff are leaving. I mean, I'm talking to people every day. They always message me, "Oh, I've resigned. I've resigned from my partnership. Oh, I've quit. I'm just going to locum now." Um, a nurse, who is just stopping, and they're all looking for other things, which is really, really sad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's survival.
Did you how did you get involved in digital GPing?
Digital health. So again, it's that whole just trying something new, isn't it?
Right.
So I remember, so it was probably 2015, and it was really frowned upon. People who were doing that were not good. And a friend of mine, she'd been away, and she came back, and she's like, "Oh, I'm working for Babylon." I was like, "Really?" And I was like, "How on earth can you treat anyone online? You can't even examine them." And she was like, "No, seriously." She's like, "There's a lot, you use video calls. It's really easy." And she's like, for example, sore throats. She's like, "I use the Centaur criteria. You can get them to feel their own neck." And she's like, "A lot of what we do is on the history, Sherina." And I went into work the next day, and I realized that, yeah, 80% is from the history. And so, she's like, you should try it. And in the end, I thought, "Oh, I'll give it a try." So I applied, and, you know, I think back then there were very few doctors. I remember we went for a Babylon thing in London, and there were only about four doctors there, and it was all new, different people. They were really young and full of hope, which was really different to the NHS, where people are just trying to survive. And it was such a nice atmosphere. It's like, I want to be involved in this. This is the future. And that was in 2015, thinking, this is the future of healthcare. And it was.
Wow. And how's that experience with Babylon?
Yeah, so I worked for Babylon till I had my son. But then to go back, they wanted me to do fixed shifts, and I didn't want to do fixed shifts. So I left there on good terms, and I started working with Doctor Care Anywhere, because I could choose my shifts. So I was a annualized, not annualized, I was a self-employed doctor, working with Doctor Care Anywhere when I wanted. But then obviously when I left in 2020, I joined them on a fixed shift. And then at the end of 2020, I joined them as a clinical lead. And that was life changing. Becoming a clinical lead just taught me all the different transferable skills that doctors have that we don't even realize we have. It's been one of the best roles I've ever had.
Could you tell us a bit more about that? I mean, I'm quite intrigued.
Yeah. So just the background, because as doctors, we sort of do what we do, and we don't look at what goes on behind it. So within Doctor Care Anywhere, I was working as a GP. I'd been there for 2 years, but the day I joined as a clinical lead, I suddenly got added to all these other channels on Slack. And sort of you realize, the teams that's going on, the marketing, and then like the product to put things together. And um the best thing for me, which I still love, is that as a clinical lead, I have a group of doctors, okay, and obviously we have to check our doctors are safe. So you start to watch other people's consultations, so to check it's safe, to check they're doing everything they should be, and I love watching other doctors consult. It's really interesting, sort of the way people consult, all the different styles. Um, and one of the things again that's really apparent is that I can watch a GP and see, they're a brilliant doctor, and then there may be a period of time where they're a bit off. They're not how they are, that rapport doesn't seem to be there with the patient, or they're not asking them certain questions. And when you meet with them, you say, so what's going on? And then there'll be something going on in life, and you kind of understand. And again, this is why it's so important that we're looking after ourselves, because it's the only way we can deliver good quality healthcare. So yeah, so that side of it I really enjoy. But as a clinical lead at the minute, I've been able to write write sort of blogs for the company, that side of it. When it comes to making the platform, just even putting in sort of patient information, like how did they get their referral, when it's becoming automated, doing that, seeing how that works. And like there's buttons on that used to really annoy me. For a fit note, there was a box for private or NHS. Well, we can't do NHS fit notes. And I always used to think, why is that NHS box there? And I used to think, it's really easy, just take it off. But actually, no, when you speak to someone from product, that is a really complicated process to do, and it would involve doing other things, and it's just what you think and you don't know. Again, we know nothing. It's yeah, it just opened up a whole new world. Um, it, just fascinating.
Yeah, have you thought of taking on sort of any other leadership roles within healthcare?
No, so I mean, there's some roles advertised at the minute, but it's knowing your priorities and what you want. If I just wanted money and to work up to the top of some company or what have you, yeah, fine, start applying for roles like that. But that's not what's important to me. I want my autonomy. I want to feel like I'm making a difference on an individual level. I like the individual interactions. So like what I've been doing today, um, I wanted to be doing my own thing. And I also want time. So my working day with Renew Lifestyle, which is my website now.
The new website.
Yeah, my Renew Lifestyle, renew-lifestyle.com. But one of the days I met a yoga teacher in Hartley Whitney, which is this lovely little village, and we went to a coffee shop behind an antique shop, and we sat down. We're looking at pricing. So I'm doing a yoga workshop on Sunday coming, with looking at sort of brain health in the menopause, and she's doing yoga for that, and we're doing journaling, and it might sound woo woo again, but it's really it's more what I want to do. And it was nice, we met up, we did that. I came home and it didn't feel like work.
Yeah.
And I like it when work doesn't feel like work. And even this morning, third appointment with my lady today, and it doesn't feel like work. I was looking forward to hearing how she got on, what's changed, looking at her sleep patterns improved, her blood sugar levels have improved, and that it doesn't feel like work. And it's there's a passion there, and you feel like you're making a difference.
Yeah, yeah, and it's quite interesting how, I mean, when I was doing medicine in my 30s and sort of late 30s, I thought medicine was dead for me, so to speak. How can I regain that passion? I thought, no, it's gone forever, and I was considering, leaving medicine whatsoever. But now, sort of a decade later, you found a little sort of other part of medicine which you can actually enjoy again. And it's
Yeah,
quite, fascinating that we can go through these different phases of looking at
I
different
used to think,
aspects of
what am I going to
medicine.
do? Yeah, I was like, I can't do this till I'm 60, 70. What else can I do instead? And it's like, actually, that's why I think it's sad, because I think a lot of good doctors are leaving the profession because, yeah, they don't get that chance. That's where I would really recommend coaching, because coaching really helped me. I think it's because of coaching last year that it gave me the oomph to set up Renew Lifestyle, and look at what my priorities were.
Yeah, definitely, having those profound conversations, which is why I like, listening to podcasts and attempting to do podcasts. It's just, having those real in-depth, soul-searching insights, and just having different perspectives. And, coaching is a really formal way of doing that, which is really good. I mean, for me, I think when I went through the whole hypnosis journey back in 2016, that really allowed me to look into the dark depths of my yeah, messed up soul, and sort of find all these, yeah, messed up things that needed sorting. And medicine was part and parcel of the messed up soul I had. So it was, try and find the right medicine for me.
And you did.
Well, yeah, I'm doing my best. I think there's always room for improvement. So I think, over the next 5 years, the kind of style of medicine I'll be practicing will be different to what I'm doing now. So, because how I practice medicine now is different from 5 years ago.
But that's always going to be the case, isn't it? Don't
Well, I
you think?
hope so. Yeah, yeah, I hope so.
All the time.
Um, I mean, I think the reason why I burnt out is because I was just stagnating and doing the same things over and over again. And um, so, yeah, I don't know what's going to come in the next 5 to 10 years. Um, but I mean, I've got a lot of goals which are not medically orientated, so that's going to be quite interesting. I've been brave enough to have non-medical goals now. Whereas before it was all, yeah, medical goals all the time.
What's your purpose, Heidi? They say, do you have a life purpose? It's meant to be the thing that drives you and makes you live longer.
Yeah, I mean, my life purpose has always been serving others.
Right.
Yeah, so that's always been my life purpose, and reducing suffering for other people. So
Mm.
that's always been um, my number one purpose, and that hasn't fundamentally changed. Um, but then you can do it in different ways. It
Yeah,
doesn't
how
have to
to
be
do
through
it.
medicine. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be through the formal medical channels. I mean, certainly, I've become much more comfortable with religion and spirituality, whereas before it was sort of still um, generally a love-hate relationship, whereas now it's become more of a dynamic relationship that's constantly evolving.
Do you think
Um,
it's because it was pushed on you initially, but now you're choosing it?
yeah, so there's that for sure. No, I mean, I've just become more mature in my sort of understanding of myself, really. I think, you know, just being more accepting of how complicated I am, and how ignorant I am of myself, and how there's so much more for me to learn about myself. And I think that process allows you to learn about other people. So
Yeah.
it's a kind of a give and take relationship, which is why I like sort of speaking to other people. And I may ask nosy questions in a bit too much detail, but I'm just interested in and see how that can relate to myself. And um I mean, when I listen to podcasts, I used to listen for information and like, oh yeah, this is another thing, whereas now it's just enjoyment, and just enjoying the moment of people having a conversation.
I
um
think you would have liked old school general practice because part of the beauty of general practice was that you got to hear about people's lives and people are fascinating.
yeah, I think now if I was to go back into medicine, definitely general practice would be the thing for me. I mean, now I'm I talk I enjoy talking to patients more about the general medical condition rather than their ophthalmic condition. It's I'm fascinated about the whole body. But
Mm.
they're here for the eyes. But in my letters, when I dictate to general practitioners, it's pretty much a general condition thing. Um, and I learned that from my boss. The way that he treats patients is pretty much sort of a holistic.
realistic.
approach. Um,
Yeah,
so I quite enjoy that. So new venture, new business, that must be very exciting and scary at the same time.
exactly. It's that whole thing, isn't it? Stepping out of your comfort zone. It was scary. It is scary. There is that whole financial thing. Because my main earning is only 2 days a week now. Um, but it's slowly coming. But it's learning new things again. So learning how to use Squarespace, how to do a website, everything else that comes with it. Um, it's yeah, but it's exciting, and I also think there's no hurry. I'm kind of taking my time with this because I'm 45, but I feel like from a career point of view that my career is just starting.
Wow, yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
And I,
And
I feel like I've got time. I'm young. I feel young. I plan to live till I'm 100 because I'm following, learning lessons from the blue zones and, following lifestyle medicine. So
yeah, I mean that's a real possibility for the majority of us. I think we will be working into our 80s, I think.
exactly.
I mean,
You
there's a
need to be
few,
loving what you do.
yeah, yeah, and I think the majority of us will be working into our 80s. I think. I mean, I've got a few colleagues that I know who are still working in their 70s.
Yeah,
So, and you got to think about that seriously.
exactly. And
It's
that's the
it.
doctors who are like, I'm just getting by because I'm nearly retiring. And I think it's really sad to wish your life away.
Well, it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one because you retire and then, but I'm sure there's
But
other
then you
things.
enjoy life. When my dad's enjoying life. He retired and went on 2 world cruises when he retired. He
Yeah,
worked
yeah,
bloody hard, and yeah, now he's enjoying his retirement, and he deserves it.
yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting. I don't know much about what's going to happen for the younger generation, but I think traditional roles are not going to be here anymore, and I think it's going to be a right old myriad of different roles and identities and
Hopefully, change is coming for the better. I really hope so. Um,
yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, us being sort of older individuals, we our job is to give hope to the younger generations. That's our job. Not that we do a good job, but that's
well, actually, do you know what I'm doing tonight? Tonight, I go to a local practice, and I'm doing group consultations for the menopause.
mm.
And that's I think group consultations in the NHS are the way forward because you get a whole load of people together. Um,
Group as in patients and doctors.
yeah, no, so
Oh,
I'm the doctor, there's a
yeah, yeah.
facilitator, and it's normally about 10 women. And so there's general where they have questions and we go through things generally, and then they have 5 minutes each individual. So some of them may want HRT and we go through that. And, that's just menopause. You can do it for diabetes, you can do it for lots of conditions, but actually it improves access. The patients love it. The feedback from group consultations is always great. And as a doctor, any doctor doing group consultations, they're really nice. They're really fulfilling, rewarding. They're great. Um,
Why do you think they enjoy it, or that the feedback is good?
well, first of all, they're getting an hour and a half, yeah, of time, and particularly for menopause, that peer support. Some of them just sit there, and when someone else opens up, it's like, that's my experience too, or oh, I never even thought that was a thing. Yeah, and it, yeah, it's that peer support. And again, it's connection, community that we lack
Yeah.
these days. That, yeah, it's bringing that back.
Oh, that's lovely. So, you can amalgamate that with the whole medical experience and, so-called establishment.
Yeah, that's my NHS bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've all got to find a way back to the NHS, I think. I think that's a reasonable.
So
I think
that
that's
I'm doing it
reasonable, you
on
know.
my terms. In fact, a
Yeah.
bless, I mean, amazing practice, lovely. Rupert, I contacted her and said, "Oh, I'm local. I do group consultations. If you need anyone for menopause," she's like, "Brilliant, come on board. You can be salaried, you know." And I said, "No, I'm not doing any, you know, normal things. It's fine. I was just letting you know." And then she came back and said, "Actually, we can fund this through out of hours, if you're interested still." And it's like, yes, brilliant. And you know, it benefits them and it benefits me, and the patients benefit. That's win-win.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. You know, always on your terms is always a good thing, I think.
yeah.
Great. It's been absolutely great listening to you and listening to your journey. I like to end on this question for most of my guests. What would be your advice to yourself, sort of about to start medical school at, I presume at 18? What would be your three top sort of tips to yourself back then,
Top
having
tips.
experienced what you've experienced over the last few decades?
Wow, starting again at medical school. Oh my goodness. First of all, I think um, don't worry what other people are doing or what other people think. Do what you want. So find your passion and go after that. Um, so that would be number one. Um, Number two, I'm trying to think back. Some sort of self-care routine. I think, you know, that was severely lacking in medical school. So I think um, join some clubs, get active. I mean, this is the time where you make such friendships. If you know, if they're there, seek out your tribe, as it were. You know, so if you're doing what you feel passionate about, hopefully you'll be with other people that feel passionate about the same things, and you can build each other up. So
Not
find
just
your
KFC
tribe.
buckets, not just KFC buckets.
To be fair, I did find my tribe. We were alcoholics and we ate drunk, ate junk, not drunk. We were drunk and alcoholics, which is terrible, isn't it? I had fun. No, so still have fun, but don't destroy yourself in the process. So find your tribe, find your passion, and just believe in the universe. The universe looks after you. Everything will work out in the end. So even if things seem bad, they will not always be bad. The bad things teach you a life lesson. You will learn from it and you will get stronger from it.
Awesome, awesome. And you mentioned the website. How can people get hold of you and if they want to find out more about your
Yeah, so it's
you know, lifestyle, integrated plants, everything,
so
groups.
I am on www.renew-lifestyle.com. And yeah, you can my email is there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Obviously, if you're just wanting to chat, I seem to do a lot of calls with people just on LinkedIn at the minute,
Hint,
talking to
hint. Yeah.
people. Yeah. And yeah, and you know, so I'm doing the lifestyle consultations, I do coaching, and I do talks as well. So
Awesome. Thank you so much.
thank you, Haida. It's lovely to speak to you.